Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Nixon. I am a creativity strategist and the president of Figure Eight Thinking. I'm also the author of The Creativity Leap, and I'm thrilled to be joined right now by Alan Weiss, who is the world's leading solo consulting expert. I have also been coached by Alan, I'm happy to say, and have reaped great rewards from that. Alan is also the author of 60 books, over 60 books in 15 different languages. So thanks, Alan, for being here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. So in this short chat, I wanted you to first start out by sharing with us a story about a time when you have taken a creativity leap.
Well, I think my greatest, well, not my greatest, I think a creativity leap probably occurred when Million Dollar Consulting was published in 1992. And it was my fourth book and turned out to be my bestseller. You know, it's been on the shelves for 30 years. And because of that, people started calling me for free consulting advice. And my ego got really big, you know, oh boy, they want my advice. But I found that I was giving more time to this free advice than I was to my paying clients, my corporate clients. So after 4 years, I said to myself, well, I've got to knock this off. But then I said, how can I turn this into an opportunity instead of just ending it? And that was the creativity leap. And so I said, I'm going to charge for it. And my wife said, I don't know if anybody will pay you to be mentored. And I said, well, that's okay. At least they'll stop bothering me. And I've got a good reason. And she said, what are you going to charge? And I said, $3,500. And she said, why is that? And I said, well, that's my monthly payment on the Ferrari. So if I get 12 people, I pay for the Ferrari. Well, I got a lot more than 12 people. And in fact, my business over the next 5 or 6 years changed from corporate and Fortune 500 to solo entrepreneur, which is how you and I work together. So I think that looking at something that you don't want to do, and instead of saying, how can I get rid of it, saying, how can I exploit this? How can I make this into an opportunity? I've always been proud of doing that.
And I think you're really good at that. You're really good at making paradigm shifts, which is really core to being creative and reframing things.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think introducing value-based fees to this profession, which are traditionally charged by the hour and the day and the time unit, was another that very disruptive, to use a current term, a very disruptive creative element. And it really has changed the way people charge in the profession.
Absolutely. Good. Well, my next question is, who for you, living or dead, do you consider to be a wonder mentor for you?
Well, I have a couple.
That's fine.
One is Grant, the general, U.S. Grant, who became president. But the reason is that he was indefatigable, and he wasn't impressed by Lee's cleverness. He knew that he had to keep putting pressure on, and his men took great confidence from that kind of leadership. And so he didn't take defeat as final. He just took it as a learning experience, and he marched forward, always forward. And I like the fact that he had a philosophy that enabled him to win the Civil War where no other generals before him could on the Union side. And I always admired that. Now, he did not make a great president because, not all behaviors are suitable for all places, right?
That's right.
You're just like not the best salesperson makes the best sales manager. It's the same thing. So he would be one. Another is a guy named Ben Trigo, who passed away about 10 years or so ago. Ben owned a company in Princeton called Kepner Trigo, and that was my first consulting job. And I worked there for 11 years in the 70s, and I learned consulting from the ground up. I learned training from the ground up. And Ben was about as close to a genius as I've ever stood. He had brilliant ideas about critical thinking skills, problem solving, decision making, conflict resolution, and ultimately strategy. But he was an amazingly humble guy. He wouldn't call what he did research. He said, that's too grand a word. And my famous story about him is that he would drag me along as a 26-year-old to these executive offices in Manhattan. And he'd tell them that the project was $50,000, these CEOs. And then he put a cigar in his mouth. And one day I said on the elevator, Ben, the cigar. He said, what about it? I said, well, it's kind of rude. And he said, I need the cigar. I said, why would you need a cigar? And he said, because after I tell him it's $50,000, if I don't put the cigar in my mouth, I begin to giggle. So even a guy like this with a $40 million company had a hard time citing a large fee,
Yeah, I remember you sharing that story, and I have remembered that often. It's a great story.
Yeah, so I would include him in my little pantheon here.
So you meant so I make sure that I asked you for an example of a wonder mentor, because a lot of the way you described Grant seemed to be more of a rigor mentor, and sometimes the boundaries are blurred. Do you have anyone else you'd want to share who for you is a mentor for rigor?
Well, I'll share you two more people, and understand that my definition of a mentor is not necessarily someone who you've met. It's someone
No,
who
no,
you
I
learn
said
from.
living or dead.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
understood. And I know you don't think I'm old enough to have known Grant, so no worries.
Right.
But I mean, two of my heroes, and therefore my mentors. One is Sinatra. Sinatra is the greatest interpreter of the American songbook ever. And he didn't sing; he told stories. And if you listen to somebody with a great voice like Ella Fitzgerald or Barbra Streisand, they got lovely voices, but there's not enough soul there. Sinatra tells stories about loneliness and unhappiness and love. Uh, and when Sinatra was at his best, there was simply no one better. I mean, he was extraordinary, and he was the iconic singer of certain songs like Night and Day, and Cole Porter, and so forth. No one could sing it better. And so that level of excellence, that level of consistent excellence, but putting your soul into the song, or call it putting your soul into your work, had great impressions on me. And then the other was a baseball player named Sandy Koufax. And Sandy Koufax was a wild, untamed pitcher, young guy who came into his own and studied the mechanics of pitching, left-hander, and was the greatest pitcher in history, in my estimation. When he was unhittable. One year he was 25-7, 25 wins and 7 losses for a team that averaged less than 2 runs a game. And in a famous story in the World Series, Mickey Mantle struck out, and as he walked back to the dugout, the next batter said, "What's his stuff? What has he got?" And Mantle said, "I don't know. I never saw the ball." So I've always thought that Koufax was like Sinatra, except on the ball field. And,
Yeah.
and to strive for that level of excellence, to be on top of your game, those are these wonderful mentors to me. I don't know which category they fall in, but they're great for me.
No, it's I really agree with your point about Sinatra. I actually danced to a foxtrot to Fly Me to the Moon for my 50th birthday dance recital. I grew up on Sinatra because my father was a big jazz head and loved that Count Basie backed up
Oh,
Sinatra consistently. So I think I know the entire catalog.
yeah. And Quincy Jones did a lot of his arrangements.
That's right. That's right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Are there any final thoughts that you want to leave us with?
I would just say this. I believe in mentors. I believe in heroes, but copy their best behaviors, but don't try to emulate them. You have to be your own best self.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Alan.
Thanks, Natalie.